It's another episode of the Ranting Cast. I'm your host, Frank Arcuri, and as the Sabres play their second to last preseason game up 3-0 on the Carolina Hurricanes, I have Matthew Zader joining the show. Matthew, thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk some hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. So preseason coming down is winding down. You're someone who you write for the Hockey Writers, and you mostly cover the Vancouver Canucks. So just so before we really get into talking about prospects, which is something that we're going to focus on in this show, talk about your work at the Hockey Writers and your other stuff too.
Well, I'm pretty busy at the Hockey Writers now because I'm assistant managing editor, so I'm basically like third in command of the website. So along with my writing, I manage a lot of the stuff on the website itself as well. So, but yeah, mostly focus on the Canucks and prospects, which I love covering prospects. That's one of my passions. So Canucks prospects, also host Prospect Corner at the Hockey Writers as well, YouTube podcast as well too. So lots of stuff, really busy right now, and just excited to get hockey going, and we can start talking about prospects playing rather than just projections and stuff like that. And then the 2023 draft too, which is really exciting to cover this year too.
Yeah, the 2023 drafts are going to be a huge talking point this year. I mean, with the guy who we all expect to go number one, Connor Bedard, and then you have Mitev Michkov, the Russian in the KHL, expected to be number 2, and then you have Adam Fantilli, who's expected to be number 3. I mean, you've got a loaded top 3 right now for that draft, but it's still way too early to even be talking about these, because the only talking part right now is going to be those 3 guys, really, and but then the rest of the class is expected to be really good too.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of who drops off, who rises, I guess. But we got plenty of time to be looking at that. The prospects we're going to be talking about today are ones that are on teams already. We're going to look a lot into the prospect rankings. I pulled up a Hockey Writers article, and they have the Buffalo Sabres ranked as the number 1 prospect pool in the NHL. So let's go right into it. What do you think? How do you think this came to be? I mean, last year they were, according to this article, they were ranked 5. Now they draft Savoy, Oslin, and Kulich, and now all of a sudden they're at number 1. And you look at other teams. I mean, the Rangers were ranked as number 1 last year, and they've dropped. If I have scroll to it, they're outside the top 10, or no, they're outside the top. Oh no, sorry, it was the Kings. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. It was the Kings who are number 1. The Rangers, I didn't see where they were, but the Kings are 1. Then they're at 10 now.
Yeah.
And that was mainly because Quentin Byfield is expected to be a full-time NHLer now this season. So like, what went into the rankings?
Well, I mean, the Sabres, I think it's just the amount of quality that they added in this past draft. I mean, you're looking at guys like Yuri Kulich and Matt Savoy in just together from the first round is massive to get where they got Kulich as there, and getting Savoy. He's just going to be a top line. I don't know if he's going to play center in the NHL, but he's going to be a top 6 elite forward, and pretty soon here. I think he'll probably make it to the NHL maybe next year. So I mean, and Kulich, I think, is ready. I think Kulich's ready this year, honestly. But I don't think, just the Sabres are so loaded with young guys, I don't think they're going to have him playing. I mean, this takes the testament of their prospect pool right now.
Yeah, well, the Sabres just trimmed their roster down the other day, and Savoy was sent back to Winnipeg. Kulich was sent down to Rochester. So you've got him. You've got Alex Kisakov too in Rochester. Isaac Rosine's there.
Yeah.
And then we're still seeing if JJ Peterka makes the roster too. He hasn't really stood out in the preseason so far from what I've seen. So there's still a possibility he might go down to Rochester as well, but he would be the first forward call-up, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, with the loaded prospect pool, and then obviously they drafted Owen Power last year. I mentioned Peterka, and then Jack Quinn, who was AHL Rookie of the Year last season, and he's got a roster spot now this year, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely. I mean, they Sabres the last three draft years have loaded this prospect pool up. I mean, and you're not, and we're just talking about the top guys. There's still other guys too.
Yeah.
You took, I think, one sleeper pick that they took this past draft was Mats Lindgren of defense.
Oh, geez, what a pick that was. I don't know why he dropped so far, but yeah, that's going to be a heck of a pick in the next 5 years when you're looking back on this draft for sure.
Defenseman. He was assigned. He was sent to his junior team, and then they even took Victor Nuchev. They've been taking Russians the last couple years too, and they took Nuchev in the third round last
Yeah.
season, and he scored 50 goals in Russia last year. So another potential premium goal scorer that they picked up, and it's really exciting now as a Sabres fan to see they got a lot of young
Yeah.
guys who could make a jump, within the next couple years.
Yeah, and we didn't mention Noah Ostlund too, who
Yep.
was drafted this past draft, and he's a heck of a player as well. So I mean, there's three guys that just boost your prospect pool like crazy, and then you got Jack Quinn as well, who ripped up the AHL last year. I mean, he's close to being NHL ready. So I mean, there's a lot of talent on this Sabres team, and then we haven't even talked about the goaltending that they've got coming up as well, and Devin Levi, who I just love that guy. So I mean, he's going to be a heck of a goaltender, and they got him in that in the Reinhart trade.
Yep.
So
Reinhart trade, and then you still have Portillo. We'll see if he signs. Same thing with Ryan Johnson. See if he signs, and then they draft Tobias Lehtonen in the second round in this past draft too. So I mean, and along with UPL, who likely is going to be the starter in Rochester. I mean, they got 4 young goalies too, so plenty of options, and they're diversifying their depth in many different ways, and it's a matter of they're getting so many different guys and guys that they like, guys with high upside, and you're just hoping a couple of them stick. And if they get a couple of them to stick, I mean, guys, this team's going to be really good, really fast, and they're already starting to show it. I mean, they're up 3-0. Carolina's B team right now, and this is primarily what we think the roster is going to look like. But they've been looking really good all preseason long. I think the hype is there, and I think the hype is warranted, at least here in Buffalo. And I think the rest of the NHL is going to see, like, maybe this Sabres team is a lot better than we were kind of thinking. I mean, you get some improvement out of like Cousins if he needs to finish a lot better, I think, but he's starting to show it. Krebs too, same thing. Casey Middlestat, same thing. But these are still young guys who have upside, and with what they have on defense and Darlene Samuelson and Power leading the way, I mean, and Comrie's going to be the starter in goal, which I still love that pickup. I still think that this team is gonna make noise this year. Will they make the playoffs? That's yet to be determined, because the Atlantic Division. We're gonna go over the Atlantic prospects too. I want to focus on the division a lot more, just because that's going to be the main competition for the Sabres this year. But the Atlantic Division is going to be tough, really tough. Might be the best division in hockey this year.
Next to the Metro is pretty tough too. So I mean, yeah, but Atlantic does have quite a few tough teams to get through as well. But yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch, especially with the prospects coming up too. There's a lot of strength. Maybe not this year, but definitely in the next few years.
Yeah, see, I'm not as high on the Metro division. I think that division's more top heavy. Because you look at the bottom of the division, that's likely going to be Philly and New Jersey. I'm not sure if New Jersey's ready to take another step. It really comes down to their goaltending. Vanacek and Blackwood, we'll see. But they have the defense, and that's a good start. But then you have, I think they have like some middling teams too, like Columbus. I mean, they signed Johnny Gaudreau in the offseason, but I think they're a year away from really, competing. And then the Islanders, I just don't know about them. They have the goaltender and Sorokin. I think he's a Vezina candidate this year, personally. But then they got Barzal re-signed today. It's a huge contract, which is good. Very good. They needed to do that. But I'm just not so sure about the rest of the roster. They're still very well rounded and they should be still good defensively, but we just don't know. That's my
Yeah,
problem is we just really don't know. And then we don't know what the change in the head coaches is really going to do. I mean, even if it's, system, even if the system's still the same, it's the how you respond to the coach really that I look at.
yeah,
And then I think the Rangers will make the playoffs this year, but I don't know if they're going to be as good as what last season was because that was most of that was all because of Shashirkin
yeah,
being, having an amazing season. And if he regresses in any way, that team just by proxy is going to be worse. So you hope that, the addition of Trocheck to round out that center core and maybe Lafreniere and Kako take a step forward and Hedel too. Even the guys on defense who get better, like Keandre Miller and Braden Schneider, if they get better too, like maybe that'll make up for it, but you can't assume it right now.
yeah.
And then at some point, teams like Pittsburgh and Washington are going to fall off at some point. You just don't know. I think that's still another year. That's why I think like Columbus is a year away because they can overtake those kind of teams.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of it is pretty top heavy, but to make the playoffs out of that division, I think it's gonna be really tough. But overall, yeah, I get where you're coming from. There is a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks in that division for sure.
Based off of right now, I'm thinking 4 teams come out of both of those divisions. Just what I'm
Mm.
thinking. I'm assuming Boston's still gonna find a way to sneak in
Yeah.
just because of the experience they have. But right now, I'm thinking Carolina wins that division. I still think the Rangers, Penguins, and Capitals all make the playoffs too. I think the Islanders
Mm.
will be right there till the end as well. That's kind of my thought. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into the prospect pools for all the teams in the Atlantic Division. We'll talk a little bit more on maybe we even will talk a little more on the Western Conference too. We got I think that conference is going to be very interesting this
Mm.
year with everything that's going on. Colorado being the defending champs and everything. So we will be right back. Tonight's show is brought to you by John and Mary's, a Buffalo tradition for pizza, subs, and wings since 1952. From hoagies, subs, and wraps to traditional pizza and wings, John and Mary's menu is packed with old-time flavors and a few modern twists on classic recipes. You could cool down with Perry's ice cream or warm up with a cup of homemade soup. If you're not in the mood for pizza or wings, we have plenty of other options: seafood platters, burritos, fresh salads, and more. There is something fresh and delicious for everyone at your table. Catering, online ordering, and delivery options available. All right, back at it again on the Ranting Cast. Frank Curry, Matthew Zader with me. So let's talk a little bit about the Atlantic prospect pools. So I'm gonna just pull up a list of the teams really quick. I'm using Cap Friendly right now just so I can see the teams. And well, let's just start in order. We talked a little bit about Buffalo, so let's start. Let's go with the Bruins then. What
Mm.
what do you like about the Bruins prospect pools, and what do you dislike?
Well, I mean, the Bruins, I think, is they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot in their pool. I think they've kind of there's a lot of what ifs. I know Fabian
Mhm.
Lysell is their top prospect, obviously. I
Yes.
mean, he's such a good player. I mean, I watched him. Vancouver Giants is basically just in my backyard here, and
Yeah.
uh, he is such a skilled player. And Boston's going to have him. I don't know when he's going to become a full-time NHLer, but when he does get there, he's going to be a top 6 forward for sure.
Mm.
Other than him, I'm not really sure of any of the rest of their guys. I mean, there's a lot of, like I say, what ifs and hit or miss maybe. And they're still banking on Jackson Nika to do something. And
Yep.
he really hasn't done much yet. He's getting to that point where you're starting to have to think, well, is he a bust prospect now? So, I mean, Boston's pool isn't, I'm not really excited about any of their players in there except for Fabian Lysell, honestly.
So Fabian Lasso's not going to make the Bruins this season then?
I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of him in preseason and being that good, but I think he's still a year or two away from being a full time guy. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's he plays at some point in this season. But I don't think he makes the roster at least this year.
Okay, I'm just gonna take
From what I
one. We got the Bruins ranked 29th in the prospect pool
yeah.
this year. Yeah, for good reason too. Um. So if I stick with, I'm gonna stick with this article really quick. So it has Pittsburgh 32, Colorado 31, Islanders 30, Bruins 29. 28 we'll talk is the next Atlantic team we'll talk about. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously, they're in it to win it every year. There's nothing really they have that you need to talk about with them. They're trading prospects typically to get veterans to help them win a cup right now. But they still got some interesting guys. We know, who do you like out of the Tampa prospect pool?
Well, there's a couple guys I like in their pool, and they're so good at drafting these low, later round picks that end up being good. I mean, over their history, they've had quite a few, either late round picks or undrafted. So guys like Dylan Duke, Isaac Howard was a heck of a pick in the first round, towards the end of the first round there. He doesn't just have skill; he's got personality, like you saw at the draft there. I think he's going to be a heck of a player in the NHL at some point. And Dylan Duke was drafted in the fourth round, and he was supposed to be in the second round in a lot of the rankings, but he dropped quite a bit. So mostly because of his size. I mentioned him on Prospect Corner the other day as being an underrated prospect, and he definitely is, because he's just such a skilled player. But like I say, his size may work against him, but as you can see with Tampa Bay, they don't seem to care about that. I mean, size hasn't been an issue. Tyler Johnson was a heck of a player for them for a long time, really undersized, but really good. Martin St. Louis, another one. Duke isn't as small as them. He's 5'10", but he's still got a lot of skill. And for a guy that he only scored 10 goals this past season with Michigan, but on a stacked team. I mean, the University of Michigan has so many good first round picks on their team. So you can't really expect them to really blow the roof off, but 10 goals is still a decent season for a freshman year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, as I said, Tampa's in it to win it. So, but they're going to have to start looking at, drafting a lot better and getting these young guys and keeping them as well. I mean, another young guy they have is Cal Foote, and he's going to have a permanent spot on the roster this year too. So, they're definitely looking at him as a guy who they want to see step up as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So next team on this list, they're number 25 in this Hockey Writers article. That's the Florida Panthers, a team that won the President's Trophy last season, was swept by Tampa in the second round, and then went out and made the biggest trade of the offseason, acquiring Matthew Tkachuk from the Calgary Flames. Their top prospect, I think, is Mackie Samoskevich. What do you think?
Yeah, Samoskevich, I would say, is their top prospect. Denisenko is an interesting one. He just can't seem to get it together, but he's still, if he can make it to the end, over in North America here and do some stuff, I think he's good. But at this point, I think Samoskevich is probably the top prospect. Another guy I really like from this pool is Evan Naus, very underrated defender. I know Peter, who wrote this article, he's the head of the draft and coverage over at Hockey Writers here, and he really liked him in the draft during that draft year. And I really liked him too. I was hoping that he would get to a point where the Canucks could draft him, because he's just such a solid two-way guy. And Florida's got a couple of those guys. Casper Puccio, who had a heck of a World Juniors this past one. And I think he's going to be a really good defenseman in the NHL as well. So, they may be in it again, another team that's in it to win it right now, but they have some underrated prospects coming up, especially on the defensive side. Justin Surdiff is another, not defense, but another forward that I really like as well. So they got some really good underrated guys on their team.
Yeah, and they still got some young guys on the roster right now. I mean, they just re-signed Spencer Knight to a contract. He's still expected to be their goalie of the future after, whenever Bobrovsky either hangs it up or gets traded or something. And then the guy who I love so much, who I wanted the Sabres to draft when he was drafted, was Anton Lundell. This guy's primed to be the second line center behind Barkov for the next few years. He'd be a top center prospect on most other teams.
Oh, Anton Lundell. I mean, there's another guy that flew under the radar last season as a Calder guy. I had him I think, at third in the Calder rankings because I wrote a tracker all throughout last season, and he was flirting with the number 2 spot at times. And he's just such a good two-way player. I mean, they already have Barkov on the team, and they're getting this guy now. And he's he may even be better than Barkov in his prime. I mean, he's just so good. And I was hoping, I mean, I don't think the Canucks were able to get him, but yeah, well, what a pick that Florida got to when they got him in the first round for sure, too.
Yeah, he's a guy who I was following right from the get go. And for something for me is I'm big on fantasy sports. So
Yeah.
obviously football and hockey are my two. So I'm looking, and with doing, especially doing a dynasty hockey league, getting a guy, I'm able to get a guy like Anton Lundell in my, right, after he's drafted and signed,
Yeah.
and just being able to wait on him and being able to do that with like a lot of other young guys as well, man. It's fun. It's fun to just watch these prospects develop. Um, so when I scroll down, I'm gonna go find the next Atlantic team. Let's see here. Rangers are at 19. That's where they were. Toronto Maple Leafs are at 16 on this list. They were at 15th last year. They're interesting because a couple guys who graduated. Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin are the two that come to mind. Sandin finally signed a contract too.
Yeah.
22 and 23 years old. Um, their top core is still young. Matthews is 25, Marner's 25, Nylander's 26. So they're right in their prime ages right now. Bunting is now not a rookie anymore at
Yeah.
27. But Nick Robertson is still an interesting prospect to me. Nick Abruzzese as well. Rodan Omirov,
Yeah.
he was the one who I think dealt with what was that?
He was died with cancer, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, yeah. So, and but I think he's still got a bright future.
Oh, yeah.
What do we make of the Leafs prospect pool? Really after those guys.
Yeah, they're like I said, they're another one that's interesting to me, like you said, and they've got a lot of guys that, like Robertson, like you mentioned. It looks like he may be breaking through this year. He's very good in
Mm-hmm.
preseason. Hopefully, can kind of bring that into the regular season and be consistently good. But yeah, Mirov, I really like. Roni Hirvonen is really good too, and in the World Juniors, he really came alive and was one of their top players. So I think he could end up being that really good middle six guy, centerman. But again, you're not sure if he'll play center in the NHL. Matthew Nyes, obviously,
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about him on Prospect Corner as potentially making his mark soon. Topi Niemela, I mean, he was a later round pick, and he's ending up being one of their top defense prospects now. So a lot of guys that you're kind of hoping will hit, and we'll see if they do. But a lot of interesting names on the list. Fraser Minton, who they just drafted, is a really intriguing prospect. Follow him quite a bit down, in BC here. He plays in Kamloops. So, yeah, Minton is another guy that I think is going to end up being a really solid, maybe top six player and being that really gritty two-way guy's really hard to play against. So watch out for the Leafs prospects. It's interesting because they've been such a good team over the years, but they do got some prospects that could end up being pretty good.
Does Matthew Nye sign it after Minnesota season?
I think he will. I mean, it's kind of it's always hard to gauge if
To
they
predict
will
it, yeah.
sign, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like it's going to be one of those things that he's like, well, I want to go to free agency, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll see.
I guess I'm more thinking of do the Leafs are they going to really try to push to sign him?
Oh yeah.
When Minnesota season's over. I guess it would depend on when their season ends. I mean, Minnesota could be a really good team this year. I mean, we talk about Ryan Johnson a lot. He's gonna be there obviously, and then I think Minnesota's primed to have another good year. So we'll see maybe if they make the Frozen Four or maybe make the national championship as well. So let's go to the next team on the list. They're 14th in this Hockey Writers article. The Ottawa Senators, who made a lot of big moves in the offseason, signing Claude Giroux, trading for Cam Talbot, trading for Alex DeBrincat. Their top prospect right now, I think, is Jake Sanderson, and he's going to make this. He's going to be on the Senators this year, but One prospect who comes to mind who I think is getting underlooked because he was injured for pretty much all of last season is Shane Pinto.
Yeah.
What do you think about Pinto? You think think he rebounds this year, whether it's in Ottawa or whether it's in the AHL?
I think so. I mean, I really liked his game. He did play quite a little bit in the NHL, but yeah, I think he's going to be really good. I don't know if he makes, he plays in the NHL consistently this year because of all the additions that they made. There's not a lot of room for
Yeah.
prospects to kind of break through. I mean, Ridley Gregg maybe. I mean, he's more of that could be a third, fourth line guy.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really like Pinto's potential, but I'm not sure when that's going to be. It depends on how, how fast they figure the veterans will stay, but we'll see.
Yeah, and you still got Brady Kachuk, Josh Norris, who are 23. DeBrincat, they traded for, who's 24. Jake
Yeah,
Matheson's 24. They still have to sign Alex Formanton, who's 23. We'll see if he even signs. And then Pinto's 21. Then Stutzla only 20
yeah,
still.
lots of young guys still.
Lots of lots of young guys. And then Shabbat's still only 25.
Yeah,
He's still relatively young. One prospect that still comes to mind who I'm just not so sure on is Eric Brandstrom.
hmm
23 right now. He was the big prospect in the Mark Stone trade, trading Stone to Vegas. Do you think he takes a step forward this year, or do you think Ottawa, it's just at some point, just cuts him loose and gives him a fresh start on another team?
Well, I think he's got to have a really good season this year because he is on kind of that short leash, I think, on when, his potential's so high and he
Mhm.
hasn't really hit it yet. I mean, he's really young. And it's funny how we kind of look at these prospects and we're like, when they get up to that 23, 24, if they're not hitting, you're like, okay, there's something wrong. But really, they're still really young. They still have quite a few years
Yeah.
before they hit that prime years of like 25 to 28, right? But I think in Ottawa, because of so many other prospects kind of pushing him, I think he's got to have a really good season this year. Kind of look like he's going to be maybe not hitting his potential yet, but kind of pushing there because
Mhm.
on a team that has so many prospects, maybe not as much on the defense side. I think he does need to do something this year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that worries me about prospects, it's like even the more games they play, even when they're young, the more you kind of figure out, okay, maybe this is just who they are, especially if they keep
Yeah,
making the same mistakes over and over again. That was the one thing that plagued the Sabres for years with Rasmus Ristolainen. They
yeah,
kept pushing him as that number one defenseman, top pairing guy, playing him 25 minutes a night, but he keeps making the same mistakes over and over again in all those minutes, and they kept losing games. And you're wondering, okay, is he going to get better, or is he this just who he is?
yeah.
And
That.
we're starting to see that now this year with Henry Yukiharu.
Mhm.
He's becoming Risto light in a way amongst us Sabre. If you talk to Sabres fans on Twitter, I mean that's what they'll say about Yokiharu.
Yeah,
That 100%. In Ottawa, obviously they'd have Tyler Boucher too. They drafted really high a year ago, and then Jacob Bernard Docker on defense too, right shot D, 22 years old, and he's a guy who I wonder is if he's ever going to push for a roster spot too.
yeah.
He could be a reason that Brancham gets pushed down to the AHL or gets traded.
Yeah, they've got a few, I think, defense prospects that are going to have to start doing something soon. Especially Jake Sanderson kind of looks like he's the real deal now. I mean, preseason's preseason. We'll see what he does in the
Yeah.
regular season, but he looks like he's ready. So he's going to take a spot. If he plays Brandstrom, what happens, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
just he'll get pushed down even further. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to watch how that all plays out.
Definitely. I think Ottawa needs that too. They need these guys to start pushing up because I'm real suspect on their defense going
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
season. Obviously, I like Sanderson as a prospect, love Shabbat. I think Artem Zub's really good too. But after that, I mean, I don't really trust, Zaitsev, Travis Hamonic, or Nick Holden really.
No, no.
Decent guys, but I mean, they're not guys you want to play in, 25 to 20 minutes a night, really. And now they just lost Talbot for multiple weeks, so so
Yeah,
Anton Forsberg's going to be the starter, for the first few weeks of the season. So they're really going to need their defense to step up. I mean, I'm not sure Forsberg's going to have a similar year that he had last season as well.
Yeah.
So we'll go down the list now. We go into the top 10. We've still got a couple more teams that we got to talk about. And we'll talk about the team that had the number one prospect or the number one pick in last season's draft, taking Juraj Slafkovsky and the Montreal Canadiens. We'll talk about Montreal. We'll talk about Detroit, and then we'll take our last break. And then I got a little fun question that we'll have coming out of that. But Montreal takes Slafkovsky. They take Philip Mesar later in the draft too. Besides those two, I think Slafkovsky is going to be really good
Oh,
in
yeah.
the NHL. He already looks good in the preseason. I think Masar is going to be good too. He'll need a year or two to develop, I think, but I think they're both going to be just fine for Montreal. What other prospects do you like for the Canadians?
Well, one guy I love that they drafted was Lane Hutson. I mean, geez, this guy was, again, undersized, but he's just so skilled. I mean, he just bleeds that modern day defenseman that you want. Guy that can move the puck, guy that's creative. First pass is amazing. Great offensive instincts, and in Vancouver we got Quinn Hughes here, and
Mm-hmm.
again, Lane Hutson is that type of defenseman. Again, smaller, but he has the potential to grow into maybe 5'10". So I think they got a heck of a guy down towards the end of the second round, which I was so surprised he almost dropped into the third. But I love Lane Hutson. If anyone's been watching anything that I've said, on Prospect Corner, you know this. So
Mm-hmm.
Hudson's a heck of a guy, prospect wise, and we'll see what he can do. Owen Beck has looked really good in preseason. That he just signed a contract, entry level. So you can watch him. He's another guy that I'm really excited about for the Montreal Canadiens. Overall, they've got such a good pool of guys right now to draw from. Sean Farrell, Joshua Waugh. I mean, yeah, Farrell is a guy that keeps getting. I think he's overlooked a bit.
Mm-hmm.
He blew up the Chicago Steel in his draft year, and then he's over to the college level, and he's ripping it up there too. When he makes it to the NHL, he's going to be a heck of a playmaker for a sniper, like Cole Caulfield or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So they've got a lot of guys, and I haven't even mentioned like guys like Caden Gooley and
Mm-hmm.
some of their defense prospects. So, if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, apart from maybe goaltending, you've got some good guys coming in all the positions. So if a guy like Caden Primo can maybe, take over for Carey Price, they're going to be fine for a while.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting young guys too, and you mentioned Kanu Gully, and then there's also Justin Barron,
Yeah,
who they got from Colorado in the Lehkonen trade, and then Jordan Harris, who's 22 years old. Just a lot of young guys. Yeah, to go to complement Cole Caulfield, Nick
yeah,
Suzuki, who's still only 23. They trade for Kirby Doc too, and we'll see what happens with him. But he's also still 21, so I don't really see any reason to think that maybe there's still something there for him as well.
yeah,
Um, Next team we'll talk about is I believe the last team on this list, the Detroit Red Wings. Yep, they are the last team on this list. Obviously, Moritz Seider is awesome.
yeah,
That's the first thing. He's amazing. Love him. Lucas Raymond, top line winger for years to come.
yeah,
Definitely. They took Marco Casper ahead of the Sabres. I thought they would take Savoy
yeah,
personally. Really did think that, but they took Casper. Savoy falls to the Sabres. Simone Edvinson's another interesting young defenseman that they have. And then a really interesting goalie prospect too in Sebastian Kosa.
yeah.
So I know Detroit, I feel like they've drafted well recently. I'm just wondering, are there any other young guys besides those top ones that aren't being talked about that could make an impact on this team, within the next year or two?
Well, if anyone's been watching Grindline, is another YouTube show on the hockey writers here, and Elmer Soderblom. I mean, if you watch some preseason games of this guy, he's 6'8", and he's a forward. This guy's massive, and he's got hands and speed. I mean, he's a bit of a unicorn, but he was drafted all the way down, I believe it was the 6th round, way, way low. I'm not sure
Yeah.
why. I mean, where he was drafted and what it seems like his potential is, I'm not sure why he dropped so far. But Detroit's just so good at drafting. Again, talking about teams that are able to draft in the later rounds and get good picks, they can do it too. I mean, they've been getting some higher picks lately, but lots of later picks that are still doing it. Yeah, watch Soderblom. I mean, if you watch any of there's one on Twitter that's is a pretty good highlight reel goal if you wanted to check it out. He's going to be. I project. I mean, I did a bold prediction on this. I said that he's going to score 25 goals this season. We'll see if that happens. Seems like he's going to make the team, but he may be playing on the third and fourth line. So I'm not sure how much he'll get. But just his size alone. I mean, what he can do. There's not many players like that in the NHL right now.
His size alone just makes him a presence and makes you notice him already. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. If he makes the Red Wings and plays in a bottom six role, I mean, that'll definitely be really, really cool to see. That'll definitely help them out. I guess the one thing that concerns me with Detroit is obviously we know Steve Yzerman's a great drafter. We know, look at what he did with Tampa. I guess it's just a matter of waiting to see if there's anybody else who takes that step who maybe we don't know about, or is that still another year away from that for them?
Yeah.
They have their top guys, and then Soderblom's like one of those risers that they have, but I just wonder if there's anybody else who could take that next step. I guess the one guy I'm just by looking at cap friendly, looking at the non-roster right now, I'm thinking Joey Veleno is a guy. I think he was supposed to be a bit higher rated. In his draft year, and he fell to the late first round. I think it was 2018. It was his draft year. So you wonder if he's a guy who can still take another step forward, and he's shown it. Last season, he had 10 points in 11 AHL games, and then didn't really do much at the NHL level. But what can you do when you're 21-year-old rookie?
He's a polarizing prospect in Detroit. He's a guy that he flirts with that potential, and then he kind of goes and you're like, well, where'd it go? So I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think he needs a bit more time. Again, he's really young. So I mean, Veleno's it's gonna be interesting. Philip Zadina's another one, not a prospect anymore, but another young guy that has been a bit polarizing, but he's looked good in the preseason. So we'll see what he can do. But yeah, they've got some interesting. Like Jonathan Berggren's another one that could end up being in the NHL at some point this year and make an impact. So lots of underrated guys. Another one I want to shout out is Red Savage. Again, he may not be a high end guy, but he's going to be one of those guys that's going to win the key face-off in a Stanley Cup final, or be that gritty third, fourth line guy that seems to be you need in the NHL right now to win. So, they've got some interesting guys, but it's just going to be on the top end, high end Lucas Raymonds of the world to push him forward right now. But Detroit has a lot of potential in their pipeline for sure.
All right, we got to take our final break, and when we come back, let's do a little predictions. We'll I want to hear where you think the teams are going to finish this year. We got our ad for Dinosaur Barbecue. We will be right back. Located in the heart of Buffalo's Theater District, the Buffalo Dinosaur Barbecue occupies a former vault that stored movies for Universal International Pictures. Dinosaur Barbecue has been in Buffalo since 2014 and is located on 301 Franklin Street. Looking for a food stop after your day trip to Niagara Falls? Only 30 minutes away. Back at it with the final segment of the Ranting Cast. Frank Arcuri, Matthew Zader with me. We were talking a lot about the prospect pools for the Atlantic Division. We started with the Sabres. They have the best prospect pool according to the Hockey Writers. We went through all the other teams. Now let's do a little predictions. Have a little fun to end this show. When I said earlier, I had 4 teams coming out of the Atlantic, 4 teams coming out of the Metro this season. I got the list pulled up. So I have the Leafs winning the division this year. I think it's their turn to do it. They're going to get over that and have win their first division title in a long time too. They have not won the division in a while. I know that. I have the Panthers in second, Lightning in third, Bruins in fourth. They will all make the playoffs. I have the Sabres in fifth. I have Ottawa in sixth, Detroit seven, Montreal eight as my Atlantic. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Toronto winning division. I think they've got the strongest team. If their goaltending holds up, that's the biggest question mark, I think, with them.
I think one thing I can argue with that is they were really good despite their goaltending last season.
True,
So I
true,
don't see any
true.
reason why they still can't be good this year.
That's true. And Florida kind of really overachieved last season. It depends on how Matthew Tkachuk fits in.
Mm-hmm.
If he can, I think they could potentially be there winning the division as well. But I think it's Toronto, Florida. I think Tampa gets in there. I'm not really sure about Boston. I think Boston's going to drop off this season, especially if they can't, survive the first few months without, guys, top
Yeah.
defensemen and Marchand, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if they can't survive that, I think they're really behind the eight ball.
Mm-hmm.
But I see Buffalo being that. Buffalo is interesting. I think they could actually surprise a lot of people, like you said at the beginning of the show there. They've got an interesting team. I think Tage Thompson is one of the more underrated forwards in the NHL, and he already looks good. I saw the
Mm-hmm.
goal he just scored in this preseason game
Yeah.
today. So, yeah, and I have him in my fantasy pool, so he better keep doing that. I
We all
see.
want it to happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, at least score the 38 goals again. That's
That'd
pretty
be awesome. That'd
exciting.
be awesome if you did. So going into the Metro, I still have the Hurricanes, Penguins, Rangers, and Capitals making the playoffs in that order. So Carolina wins the division. I think they're the best team in the Metro. I have Islanders, Blue Jackets, Devils, Flyers rounding out 5 to 8. Islanders, I like I said earlier, I don't know about them. They're just such a wild team to me. I they have a lot of question marks, but they have a lot. They could reclaim that magic from a couple years ago too, and they could go on another run if they get in. I think Columbus is a year away, and then I think the Devils and Flyers still got a lot of work to do on their rosters.
Yeah, I think Carolina for sure. Rangers could sneak there too because it's just Sturkin alone. But Carolina is going to be like if they had, Pacioretty to start the season, that would have been better. But
Mhm.
he's going to be out for a bit. But when he does get back, I mean, they're still stacked. I mean,
They're still stacked, and I
it's
think
still
adding
stacked.
Pacioretty was just a luxury for them.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
they
the
were
way
already good before.
I look at them adding Pacioretty, and I think that's a trade deadline acquisition that they made in the offseason, essentially.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
especially when he's going to come back, it's going to be closer to that.
they got
So
him for nothing, so I don't.
yeah,
So
that's
there's
right.
no downside. There's no downside to it.
Yeah,
Um,
I see Carolina winning it for sure. I agree with the Islanders being that wild card. We'll see what happens, but Columbus I think is be the more interesting team if Goudreau
they
can
are.
come up. But their defense and goaltending, I'm still not confident.
Their defense is. I think their defense is a year away with Jiracek
Yeah,
drafted high, and then they had two defensemen that they drafted. I think they're just a year away from
yeah,
really making noise. And having Gaudreau and Line A together, and then Sillinger and Kent Johnson too. I
yeah.
love Kent Johnson. Um, So just give them a year and let them figure it out, and I think they'll be just fine.
Oh
So
yeah,
going on to the Western Conference, the defending champs, Colorado, I think they're going to win the Central.
oh yeah.
That's pretty easy. I have the Wild and Blues 2 and 3. Those are the only teams I have out of the Central making the playoffs.
Yeah, I see that. I don't see any of the. I mean, Dallas, if they don't get Robertson signed, they're in
Oh,
trouble. They're
they're
in
in
total
deep
trouble.
trouble.
I
And
mean,
there's been rumors and obviously we had heard that the Sabres had called about Robertson probably just to
yeah,
see what the asking price is and maybe see what kind of contract he's looking for too. I don't know. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know how much true interest the Sabres would have, but they have the prospects to
Oh yeah.
done if they really think that they can make a run this year at least. I don't that would obviously have to be the case if they're thinking about this kind of move. But I actually have the Stars finishing fifth in the
Mm.
Central. I have Nashville fourth still. They're still a good team, even with the healthy UC Saros, but I don't see him getting in. I just don't think. I think a team
Uh,
there's going to be a team that falls out because another team's going to climb in this year. So and I think Nashville is that team that falls out. I have
mm.
Winnipeg 6, I have Arizona 7, and I have Chicago 8. Um, no, I had a Chicago person on. last week. Brooke, she was awesome.
Yeah.
I just think that they're completely tanking for Connor Bedard this year. Arizona, I think they're tanking too for Bedard, but I just don't think they're going to tank as hard enough. Really, that's kind of where I'm going at. But if they trade Jacob Chikrin, then they might be the worst team in that division.
Yeah. Yeah.
It happens. I mean, realistically, um,
Probably their best. Well, Clayton Keller's pretty good, but he's one guy. He's one
yeah,
forward.
he is really good though. He is really good. In the Pacific, I have the Flames repeating as division champs, even with losing Kachuk and Gaudreau. They get Huberdeau, they get Uyghur. They're still a really good
Oh
team.
yeah.
Still well rounded. They signed Kadri in the offseason. They trade Monahan to Montreal, and they still got Elias Lindholm and Mikhail Backlund. So that center core in their top 9 still really good. And
Yeah.
Mangiapane as well. I think Calgary can repeat as division champs in that Pacific. The team that I'm really high on this year is the team that you cover, Vancouver. I love them this year. I love Bruce Boudreau as a coach. I think Quinn Hughes is a dark horse Norris candidate
Oh yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
Um, Besser being out really stinks, but I think they're just a good, well-rounded team with Elias Pettersson as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if Puck-Holzen can take a step forward, and a Hoglander too. And then Thatcher Demko is another guy who maybe he gets into the Vezina conversation
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah. I can see it. The thing is, and another guy I'm really excited about seeing the regular season is Andrei Kuzmenko. He's looked really good in the preseason, albeit one game. He's only played one game so far. He has 2 goals and an assist in that game. So looks to have a lot of chemistry with Pedersen. So if they can move that to the regular season and be like that all season, that's another addition. But the only question mark I have with the Canucks is their defense. And that's just the biggest one. If they can't lock it down in front of Demko, they're going to be in trouble. I don't know. They may still, I think they're going to be in that playoff discussion towards the end, even if they don't, improve the defense. But I'd say the excitement around the Canucks this year is probably the biggest it's been in a while, even though they haven't won the preseason. Everyone's kind of freaking out on Twitter because of that, but
yeah,
it's preseason.
it's preseason. It does not matter. I think if Demko has a kind of a Vezina caliber kind of year, it really doesn't matter who you have on defense. And obviously, they still have OEL. I wonder who's going to be that top right defenseman on the right side. It might be Quinn Hughes. It just might be
the way it's going. Yeah.
Another young guy they have too, Travis Dermott, coming from the Leafs last year. He's still interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then obviously they re-signed JT Miller, so that's really good. He was almost a 100-point player last season. Connor Garland as well. They signed Ilya Mikheyev. Doesn't seem like his injury is going to be all that bad. It seems like
he's skating. I believe he's skating tomorrow, so we'll see.
That's good.
So he may be back soon. He may be back by opening night. We'll see.
So the team I have coming in third in the Pacific, Edmonton. I mean, nothing more you got to really say. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. There you go. They signed Jack Campbell, so hopefully he brings some stability to the goaltending position. And then I think Stuart Skinner is going to be the backup. So they got their probably young goalie of the future.
Yeah.
There too. So you see what happens with him. I think they come in third. I have the Kings coming in fourth. They could push for that third as well. I think they're really good, especially if they got most of their young guys playing with a healthy Byfield, Kaliev, Gabe Velarde. See him finally really healthy and playing too is awesome. They trade for Fiala. Sean Walker's healthy as well. Sean Dursey, a young defenseman that I really like. And obviously Quick was really good last season, and Cal Peterson, so they got 2 solid goalies.
LA I think is another team that is on the rise with prospects. But I mean, they did drop in that rankings, but it's because all their prospects starting to graduate too. So that's a good thing. A lot of the time, it's just now replenishing. But
I see their defense too, and I'm just thinking, I thought Brent Clark would make the roster this year, but they have a lot of good guys that I don't think that there's a spot for them, which which once they get him as well, man, I think Brent Clark's great. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
I think Vegas gets in this year, despite the goaltending that they have. Laner's going to be out for the year. I like Logan Thompson. I do.
Yeah.
If he has a better year, I don't see why not Vegas could get in. They have
Yeah.
the high end talent already. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's really not much more you gotta say. If Stone stays healthy, they have Eichel.
And he
They have
looks really
finally have a
good
yeah, and
too.
he's been great. I mean, he is great. When he's
Yeah.
healthy, he's one of the best players in the league. We in Buffalo know this.
Yeah.
Um, but they still have the high end talent, a healthy Stone, Riley Smith, William Carlson, Chandler Stevenson, Jonathan Marchessault, Shea Theodore. I love Shea Theodore
Oh
so
yeah.
much. Alex Petrangelo. The only real question for Vegas has been their goaltending, and because Brossois out as well, and he's their
Yeah.
backup, so they got to go with Logan Thompson as their starter. And like I said, I think he's fine. I think he's going to be good. Aiden Hill, however, is pretty suspect to me, and
Yeah.
they didn't give up much to get him. But then again, like he's also, I don't really think he's that good
No.
personally. I would like to see them sign Nick Hague, but I mean, they don't really have
Cap
cap
space.
space. They never do. That's their problem. But I think Vegas gets in. I have 5 teams coming out of the Pacific, and a lot of people see the Pacific as the weakest division, and I think they're a lot better. It's a lot better of a division than people think. I actually think the Central's the weakest division, just
I
because
agree. Yeah.
we got 2 of the worst teams in the league combined with one of the best teams in the league. So that's just right
Yeah.
there. That makes that division a lot more top heavy.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what Winnipeg's going to do either. We don't really talk about them, but yeah,
But
Winnipeg's another question mark to me, depending on how the coach kind of whips them into shape.
coaching, but I will give them this. Brad Lambert looks really good.
Yes, yeah, finally. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been a little underwhelming, even World Juniors, and finally starting to show a bit of that.
He was a guy who I
That's
wanted the
great.
Sabres to take at 28, and they ended up taking Kulik there. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can't complain about that
Yeah.
either. Like, really, I would have loved to see them take Brad Lambert, but they didn't take Kulik, and I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, totally fine.
So, all right, well, little long on the show. We typically only don't go past like 30 something minutes, but we're at the 50-minute mark. But it's whatever. Matthew, thank you for coming on. You're awesome. You can follow Matthew on Twitter at Matthew Zader SC at Matthew Zader SC. You got you work for the Hockey Writers. You talk about prospects too. Do you have any other projects going on? Any other thing you'd like to plug?
No, biggest thing is Prospect Corners, my main show that I do at the Hockey Writers. So check that out. We do me, Peter Barricini, who we mentioned at the top of the show there, and Devin Little, who we 3 get together every week and talk prospects. So we always go around 50 minutes. So that's not when we talk prospects, you have to go that. So
yeah, you got to. So real quick, just to talk about your show, then you just like go over the team prospects. You go over like prospects and juniors. Like, what would you focus on when it comes to the prospects?
We kind of dabble in everything. We,
Okay.
depends on what type of news. Or right now, we've been doing, underrated prospects throughout the divisions, and whatever kind of comes to our mind to talk about. And lots of stuff usually happening. We do a lot of the draft coverage and talk World Juniors when that goes. Preview that. But yeah, we just get together and just talk about prospects. So if you love prospects, want to know a bit more about them, check out Prospect Corner. We usually go around. It seems like it's going to come out every Monday morning now, but so check that out on YouTube.
All right. Well, Matthew, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here. It was great.
Yeah, definitely. All right, that's going to do it for the Ranting Cast. I'm Frank Curry. Thank you to Matthew for coming on. We'll see you next week.